what ended up happening. What ended up happening is that morning after, that's when it was like, psych, she ain't going nowhere. Let's wait 10 days. That avoidant attachment, right? That style kicked in and gave him something different. Well, not for, I'm sorry. That happened when it was, when it was Abraham's servant. But then it also happened again when it came time for Jacob to marry Leah and Rachel. It happened later, the same thing. Laban had that same pattern. You see what I'm saying? So it's like I get the goods, I make the oath, right? Then I get the goods of either jewelry, money, material possessions, land, whatever, right? I get all of that. Then I love bomb with this party and whatnot, right? And then after the love bombing with the party, the eating and drinking, the morning after, Jacob found out that he had Leah in his tent instead of Rachel. So that was Laban's MO. He just was a bad business deal man. That was part of his narcissism, right? Because the night before, of course, that's when the avoidant attachment style would kick in. And then that next morning is when the individual who made the oath/covenant with him, that's when they found out he did not honor up to his side of the deal. You see what I'm saying? And that's when the devaluation started the next morning. That night they didn't know, but he had actually he set it in motion the night before. The love bombing was the party and all of that. But at that night, he already knew what he was going to do that next morning. It was like a psych, this is what you got. But they didn't know, right? That was part of it. He had love bombed them so quick. And after he got them goods and he love bombed them so quick. And like I said, the next morning, like they always had that figure of speech, the morning after is when they find out you ain't getting what I told you, right? But what happened was that when it came to Abraham's servant, he had the upper hand. Even though he was in a place of vulnerability of finding a wife for Isaac, he had the upper hand because Abraham had him to take his hand, put it under his thigh, and to make an oath and swear that he was going to find a wife for Isaac from one of his kinfolk, right? And then if not, still don't let Isaac go back there because God had already promised, he had already brought them out and he already had promised them that land, over in Canaan and whatnot, right? And so what happens is that even though Abraham's servant's vulnerability was that he needed a wife, Abraham had already said if she was unwilling to go, then hey, there's nothing you can do about it. The oath is broken. So Laban could only go so far with him. So after he had said, okay, no, she can't go, Rebecca can't, the next morning, just wait 10 days. And then the servant was like, no, I need to be getting back to my master. So Laban already knew either I go ahead and agree at that point, then he's again avoidance attachment style kick in. He make it seem like he's going to go with it. Then let's ask her. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I'm not going to give you what you want, or I'm going to give you something different. One of the two when it comes to that avoidant attachment style, right? So what happens too, though, when you look at this family, when you look at Abraham, you look at Isaac, you look at Jacob, right? You see how God's covenant of all of these blessings and everything he promised them, you see how it runs straight through that line. And I say that because even when Abraham's servant set out to go and get the wife for Isaac, he took 10 camels, okay? And then he gave her a nose ring, and then he gave Rebecca 2 bracelets that weighed 10 shekels of gold. The number 10 is when there's like a completion, but it's got God's stamp of authority and approval on a situation, right? And then I want you to think about it too, is that when that avoidant attachment style kicked in and Laban and Rebecca's mom said, oh, well, maybe wait 10 days. Even with that number, they could have said any number. They could have said, wait 5 days, wait 3 days, wait 4 days. You see what I'm saying? So this was obvious. This was a situation of showing that God's covenant, his blessings and authority was on their family line by that number 10 being mentioned so many times. And what else, right? Laban changed Jacob's wages 10 times. And it was at that 10th time, after it had been changed 10 times, that's when Jacob said, I'm peacing out. He also got the Lord's approval, right? And even before that, he had tried to leave. You see what I'm saying? He had tried to leave before that. And so what happened is that when we get into the point where we are being hoovered and they start mentioning a lot of stuff that sounds good to us and maybe that they had not done before, then it's like, well, maybe he have changed and he's starting to use new words. He went to a therapist specifically just to have some words to use for your pastor and or for you. I've self-actualized, and I'm evolving, and I'm going through this whole self-discovery process, and I'm doing all my self-work, and I know that what I've been going through in my childhood was abandonment, and I've got a spirit of abandonment and rejection in me. They will say anything to pull you back in. I mean, anything to pull you back in. And then what happens too is that uh, when God has made it clear for us to go, and you decide, for us to go and then to stay out of it, and then you go back inside, then what do you have to deal with again? You got that hardness of heart, you've got that spiritual blindness, right? And you've got the arrogance, and you've got the avoidant attachment style to deal with once again. And this is for all narcissists. They all have all of this to the umpteenth power, right? And then along with that, you've got that unteachableness. And then don't let it be a cerebral narcissist. Any kind of cerebral narcissist is going to really be unteachable to like another umpteenth power than the norm, right? Because they know everything, right? You can't tell them a thing until you happen to they go through something, and then you happen to mention, oh yeah, that happened to me when I went through it. Why didn't you tell me? To me, why didn't I tell you? You unteachable. Everything I tell you, you know you got a better solution for it. The therapists are wrong, the psychologists are wrong, the psychiatrists are wrong, any type of physician, the gynecologist, the oncologist, whoever it is I'm mentioning, you know more than them. So why would I tell you about what it is I went through and think maybe possibly you could learn from it when you've already like devalued what I've said and then use passive aggressive means to do it? See what I'm saying? So it don't make any sense. And so with these narcissistic individuals, what happens is that they become a slave to the demon of the narcissist themselves, right? And we know that Satan was the very first narcissist, right? And so for us to think that, and even with Jacob,